Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary with Carl and Laura Forehand.
Often when we have doubts about religion or simply want to ask questions, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert.
We would like to invite you to join our sanctuary, the Desert Sanctuary.
We've tried to pick guests that would resonate with and challenge us and our fellow seekers here in the desert.
We believe that a key to the journey is to keep asking good questions, and we believe that all stories are sacred.
Our hope is that you will find life and healing for your body and mind, and that you will be able to be where you are and be who you are.
And now, here is our show. Hi, welcome to the Desert Sanctuary podcast. I'm Laura Forehand, and it feels like forever since I've done this. So welcome to the podcast. Those of you that are listening, I'm here with Carl Forehand, and we are here today with some wonderful friends. We have had the opportunity to know them online, but we have had the even better opportunity of meeting them and having coffee with them in person, and they're just a delight. We have Larry and Jill Jordan here today. As we're recording this, we're looking out of Jill's beautiful window, the snow in Colorado. So I'm a little envious, but
For sure.
yeah, but we are so grateful to have you guys joining us today from snowy Colorado. And I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm kind of coming in blind, but I'm really excited to learn some new and interesting things. And before we get started, you wanted me to mention that Larry does have a website, and it's larryjordanauthor.com. So anyway, we're so glad to have you both on the podcast this morning. Thank you so much. It's a little bit earlier there in Colorado than it is here. So thank you so much for getting up early and joining us on the Desert Sanctuary.
It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is our series. The way we're doing our podcast right now could change tomorrow, but we've been interviewing guests. We always feel like I put things on a time crunch, and so I always feel like with a 45-minute podcast, you just never get time to talk about everything you need to talk about. And Larry and Jill have wisdom. They have creativity. There's a lot to pull out of their experience.
Right.
And so they're one of the people I thought of on my whiteboard right over there to come on and explain some things to us and share their story with us even more than before. And we're going to talk about the places we won't go.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's so funny because summer school is like, oh, the places you'll go. That's the theme this year. So we're going opposite of Dr. Seuss, I guess. So
yeah, and they are in a place most people don't go right now in Crestone, Colorado. And we're just so thankful you gave us a couple of hours here of your time. And we're going to see what we do. So, Larry.
The places that we don't go. Sometimes I introduce myself. I tell people, I've had a pretty radical reconstruction. And I got scolded one time. Somebody says, it's not a contest. No, it's not a contest. But I say that only to say that, we would like to have conversations about things that most people don't talk about. Most of us are grounded in a Western Christian perspective. That's what we think. We think that God's a person. We think that we're persons. We have personal relationships. And somebody else scolded me, and they said, after I talked about it, they said, well, this isn't just your story. It's your story and Jill's story. I said, well, yeah, that's right. But we do have two different perspectives, and she could write her own book. But thankfully, we went through the journey together. And I think what you'll realize is that I'm the slow learner in the group. I'm the guy that had to read 1,000 books. I'm the guy that, had to actually have a few experiences before, he got the message. And Jill just gets things more intuitively. And I joke, we have a Zen practice, and I joke, we do koans, which are riddles. And I say, if Jill and I did the koans together, because it's an individual exercise, if we did them together, I'd be much farther along and she would not be as far along. She just has an intuitive understanding of this stuff. So in the book, the first half is deconstruction. It basically holds up Christianity and the Western worldview. Some of this makes sense and some of it doesn't. But I had to have the first half of the book because if you write a book about spirituality, most people say, well, I'm really anxious to read more about the Bible and the God of the Bible and Jesus, his only son. And that's in the book. But, we live in a world where there's 8 billion people and 2 billion of them, that's their perspective. And the rest of them, it's not.
Right.
And so there's three principal things in the book. One is that Eastern religions, whole different perspective on concepts of God and the universe and our place in it. Mysticism, which is people that go out and have direct experiences of what I call ultimate reality. Some people might call God, other people might call it the universe. And then the third thing is the quantum physics, which the physics, really underscores that the lessons that the mystics and the Eastern religions teach us, it's not just woo-woo stuff. It's the scientists, the new science, and it's new 100 years old. But people like Einstein and Oppenheimer, they confirm, hey, we live in a connected universe. There's something going on here that we don't necessarily see um, unless we have certain experiences. So the first thing we're going to talk about is mysticism. And Catholics think, oh, well, if you have an experience, go talk to your priest and he'll tell you if it's the real deal or not. Presumably, the real deal means, oh, yeah, I saw all the popes on one side and all the saints on the other side. I met the three persons of God, and there's grandma in heaven. And most people that have what you call mystical or peak or transcendent experiences, that's not what they see. And depending on how you define the experience, something like 30% of the people have had some kind of peak or mystical and transcendent experience. And sometimes that's a result of meditation or prayer. Sometimes it's a psychedelic drug. Sometimes it's a seizure or a stroke. Sometimes it's a near-death experience. But if you're paying attention to all those things, you're saying, oh my gosh, these folks are having somewhat the same experience. And in the book, and nothing in the book is there's plenty of brilliant ideas in the book. Not many of them are original. I'm a reporter, and I tried to condense, my reading and my experience so people can understand what's out there. But there are 7 characteristics of mystical experiences. Ineffability, you can't really explain it in normal terms. Noetic, it seems like you're being exposed to special knowledge or experience that you've never seen before. Transiency only lasts for minutes, hours. Most people don't spend their lives in an elevated mystical state. Passivity, it just happens to someone. There's not many folks that sit down and say, I'm going to have a mystical experience, and then they have it. It can happen in front of a waterfall. It can happen listening to music. In a Zen experience, there's plenty of people that a pebble hits a bamboo shoot, and all of a sudden they're transported into another realm. Unity of opposites. You have a sense of oneness or wholeness or completeness. People report things like, I don't know where my hand ends and the rest of the universe begins. Timelessness. You feel like, oh my gosh, was I there for a minute or was I there for a month? And a feeling that you somehow encountered your true self, cosmic self beyond life and death. Now, in the Zen tradition, they say no self, and that's something maybe we can talk about later. But they still say your true self is no self, and what that means is no separation. There's not, like in the Western scheme, God's up here and I'm down there. It's in the Eastern scheme, God is what Paul Tillich called the ground of being. He's what Meister Eckhart called the Godhead. Um, it's the sometimes say the architecture of the universe, not the architect of the universe. God interpenetrating everywhere and everything. And in that scheme, if that's really the way that ultimate reality is, how could you have original sin? How could you have a separation between God and man? So I told you I'm a slow learner, and I've read all these books. I've seen all these experiences. I'm grasping that there's a commonality here. This is not a Christian thing or a Hindu thing. It's not even a theist thing. Atheists have mystical experiences. It's a thing. And I've got this pile of books in front of me. I slam them down. I tell Jill, you're not going to believe what I'm reading. And I start basically have the conversation you and I just had, and she says, "Oh my gosh, I've had that experience," and she can talk more about that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, it happened to me, and it happened a little differently. It was 1998. I had two kids we had two kids at that time, 12 and 15. And I was not on a spiritual path whatsoever. I was a soccer mom. I was a nurse. I was busy. I was a tennis player. I was in that part of my life. So I was not a seeker at that time. And we were on vacation to Costa Rica in the summer of 1998. And we decided as a family to take a hike into the rainforest. And we took a hike and we came to this beautiful waterfall. And I went off by myself and sat on a rock. I can't even explain what happened to me. It sounds unbelievable, but I promise you, I wasn't on drugs. I was not sick. I did not have a problem. But all of a sudden, sitting on that rock in front of that waterfall, my whole vision changed. And what I was seeing, and I don't know if I can explain it, what I was seeing was seeing things almost at a microscopic level. And I was looking around at all the green, and everything was moving in and out of each other. The trees, the waterfall, the plants, everything was flowing. And like Larry said, I held out my hand, and my hand was separate, but it wasn't separate. I could see the movement between everything else and myself. And it was a really profound experience, because what I was feeling what light looks like, only there's no word for it. I was feeling light, and I was feeling this overwhelming sense of unity and oneness and love. And I didn't ever want to leave that place. It was so welcoming. And so I don't know. And at the time, I felt like those spaces in between those molecules, that was God. I didn't see a person. I didn't see a thing. I didn't see anything, but I felt a very benevolent, lovely, loving presence. So I don't know how long it lasted. I have no idea, because time was not a thing during this. And so it went on. I don't know how long. And then all of a sudden, Larry came over to me and said, "Jill, we need to go back." And it disappeared. It just popped. And I couldn't even speak. I couldn't speak. I just wanted to go back there. That's all I wanted. I wanted to go back there. I didn't care about anything else. I wanted to go back there, but I couldn't speak. And actually, I couldn't tell anybody about this experience for over 15 years. Not even Larry. I couldn't even tell him, because I didn't have the words for it. I didn't know what it was. I did know in my heart that was real, and that was truth with a capital T, and that's reality that we just don't get to see generally. And I felt like it was a gift, and I don't know where it came from, and I don't know why it happened, but I didn't even know what it was. Now, bump up 15 years later, Larry's doing this deep dive studying, and he's reading about the mystics. And he has this book, and he says, "You need to read this. This is a mystical experience, and it sounds so awesome." And he gave me the book to read, and I'm reading it, and all of a sudden the tears came. And it's like, that happened to me. And he's like, "What?" And I said, "It happened to me 15 years ago." And I didn't know what it was, and I couldn't talk about it. But this was it. And it was almost it to a T. It was just incredible. But that for me was like the jump start to all the spiritual stuff for me. Because once I knew even from the start that it was truth with a capital T. But when I realized exactly what that was after reading about the mystics, that's when everything started for me, about all the deconstructing and what exactly is this. And, Larry's very academic and intellectual, and he got me going on this. Like, what was this, and what happened, and how does it affect us, and everything. So it was very much a profound thing for me that came out of the blue. I was not asking for it. I was not seeking it. I was not looking for anything. And it was just given. I don't know how else to put it.
So I just want to ask a clarifying question. So when you had that experience, why did you not say anything for so long because you were afraid of what people's responses would be, or was it because you just didn't know how to explain it? I mean, I can see how that would be a hard thing to explain, but I also can see, there's a fear when you grow up in like the Christian, realm of even saying anything that might hint on the side of mysticism because people are going to go, she was probably sick. She probably got bit by a mosquito and was in some sort of hallucinatory state or whatever. So I'm just curious, like, was it that you didn't have the words to explain what had happened in that moment, or was it a fear, or both? Maybe, I don't know.
It was both,
Yeah.
honestly, because I did not have the words. I had no words for it. I didn't, now I can say it felt like the ground of all being. It felt like the oneness. It felt like, I didn't have that vocabulary then. So
Right.
it was that. Plus, I still, to this day, even though it's been, I don't know, what, 20 some 30 years, I mean, even though it's been that long, I still can't explain it to people. I still don't have the words. It's that ineffability of it. You don't have the vocabulary. But it was also, I realized how crazy it sounded.
Mm.
I knew that. I knew that unless you knew what I was talking about, people would not either believe it or think I'm crazy or something. So yeah, there was a fear of that. I wasn't afraid of the Christian perspective of it because I felt so deeply and in my heart that it was truth.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't care about what people thought about it in the Christian sense. But there was that fear that, wow, if I open my mouth, man, nobody's going to want to listen to me again because it sounds so unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's mystics in a lot of traditions, from what
Yeah.
I understand, and they're always kind of outcast. They're sometimes not believed till they're dead and things like that. Because isn't it just that, something in us wants to be in sync with other people, and probably that's kind of natural that we do. We want to connect, but religious systems say if it confirms our already accepted truths, then I accept it. If I've never heard of it before, or it's not in our official doctrines, then it's not cool. And that's why they persecuted the mystics, right?
Yeah, and for sure, when I had the experience, I didn't see a person. There was not a person involved. There was not Jesus, or there was not, like Larry said, grandma waiting on the other side. There was none of that. It was just an overwhelming sense of belonging and love and unity. There was nothing else other than that. And like I said, it was a feeling of what you think light would feel like rather than see.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So how has that changed you? Like, think of yourself prior to 1998, and how has that overwhelming sense of love and light, how has that changed you in the last, 15 to 30 years, however long it's been?
Well, I think it in a few ways, several ways actually. It changes the way you look at people and the way you treat people because it's not so individualized.
Mm-hmm.
You learn that, wow, we are not separate people. We are all the same. We are all
Connected. Yeah.
connected.
Mm-hmm.
We are all connected. So you treat people differently. My politics changed. I used to be Republican. I used to vote Republican. I hate to even say that these days, but I did used to. I can't do that anymore. I nowhere near that. I looked at church differently. I thought, okay, what they're saying and what I experience are not the same. Mm-hmm. And so I looked at that differently. I looked at how I was living my life. I mean, I was just all about running, having tennis, having lunch, I was working and raising my kids, but that was my focus. I mean, that was my whole life. And that changed after that too. I had more of a less narrow view of things and a more expansive view.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody would like to find truth. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we hope I think in religion, I always hoped I already had it, right? But what's the key to getting there? You know, can you not do it if you're logical, like me and Larry? Or um, is it one thing that stood out while you were talking was it was just listening, maybe, that I really want to know. I'm really looking for answers. I'm not just trying to confirm what I already know. What's the key to getting there? Help us logical people out.
I don't know that there's a key. The key, I think, is just being open and allowing your filters to drop. Because I wasn't looking when it happened for me. I wasn't seeking for anything. I just went off by myself in a beautiful place and just kind of let go.
Yeah.
Filters came down. And I think that's what we have such a hard time with in society today, is letting our filters down. And honestly, I've spent 30 years almost trying to do that more, because I want to get back to that. And I've had a couple more smaller experiences since then, but nothing profound like that. And so, I think meditation can help. I think, like you said, Carl, just listening can help. But just being open to letting those filters down.
Are you still experiencing that in a way? What you experienced then is
in a very small way, but I'm telling you, nothing profound like that.
not like a big experience, but it still nurtures you and feeds you and informs you.
Yes.
A long time after the fact, right?
It does. And in fact, when I'm in meditation, I can go back there. I can go back to that place and that time and still feel what I felt then.
Yeah.
Carl, I can answer the question from a different perspective. There's lots of conversations in spiritual circles, not in Christianity, about intellect and experience. And, my minister friend one time told me Christianity is the religion of the head. It's not a religion of the heart. We think we go to church, we think we have answers.
Yeah.
What Jill experienced in my mind is the answer. Now, intellect and experience. She contrasted that I'm more intellectual, she's more experiential. She didn't have the intellectual understanding to process what happened to her, and I didn't have the experience to really realize that what was jumping off the page to me was a real thing. But for somebody like me or you, we can spend time with people that have the experience. We can read about the experience. We can understand, just like I've never been to the moon, but I have a pretty good idea of what it would be like to be on the moon, the weightlessness, the silence, the darkness. And Jill mentioned filters dropping. Another way that the intellectual person can absorb this, it's not woo-woo. It's really not. We recommend that there's a really good YouTube video called My Stroke of Insight. It's a brain scientist called Jill Bolt Taylor, and she had a stroke, and I'll come back to that in a minute. She lost the left side of her brain, which is the analytical organizing part of her brain. And the right side of the brain is basically Jill at the waterfall. Oh my gosh, I'm connected. It's at the granular level, there's a oneness. I'm not transported anywhere. It's right here. It's right now. It's been in front of me all the time. I just didn't see it because I had this left brain organizing the soccer games and the lunches and stuff.
Trying to confirm what you already know, basically, right?
Yeah. And so I think that if you think about it in terms of right brain and left brain, it is always there. There is a part of our experience that's very intuitive, creative, experiential, unitive, but it's clouded because our left brain comes in and wants to make things linear and logical and make sense. And this stuff doesn't really. It makes sense in the fact that if you experience it or you believe it, and I'm somebody, I just believe it. And I had somebody tell me one time, and maybe Jill would concur with this, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you understand that maybe 30% of the population has had some kind of transcendent experience, part of the learning that we've been through is it doesn't have to happen to me for it to matter.
That's
It doesn't
right.
have to happen to me for it to count. if we're all related, like Jill talked about the politics, people say to me, "What'd you learn on your journey?" I said, "Everybody's related, everybody's connected." And they laugh and they say, "Is that all you learned?" I said, "That's all I need.
Right.
If I understand the connection, I'll love my neighbor as myself.
Mhm.
I won't ban Muslims. I won't build walls. I won't separate families. I won't marginalize LGBTQ people." It's a dramatic reorientation of your life. And if you think about the Christian Western worldview, it's individualistic, it's separated.
Mhm.
I have a personal relationship. I'm concerned about my personal salvation. In my politics, I have personal responsibility. And what this teaches you, as Jill said, is there's a person. Where's the person?
Mhm.
Where does the person begin and end? You
Mhm.
know, and in my book, I say I keep talking like God is a person, and there's a oneness to the person, or like God is a thing, there's a oneness to the thing. There's not a person, there's not a thing, there's just a oneness.
Mhm.
Mm.
And it doesn't have to be personal. That's not how Jill or anyone else experiences it. It doesn't have to be supernatural. I mean, the brain scientist says this is what happened to me.
Mhm.
It wasn't doesn't have to be supernatural. It's just your brain. It's just the filters in your brain dropping. Why does a psychedelic experience create something like the waterfall? Because your filters drop. All of a sudden stuff's getting in or stuff's being realized that's not normally getting in or being realized.
So this is a question from my weird brain. The question, I mean, I think what I hear from mystical experiences is never, this is where the earth came from. This is where God came from. This is how it started. It's more of a conversation like this is what is.
Yes.
And that's more of the focus, right?
Right, for sure. It's white, it's what's here right now, all the time, that we just don't access. But
Yeah.
I had no feeling about anything about the origin of time or anything like that. It was just a feeling of this is always here, always was, always will be. This is just it. This is it.
We're going to talk about Zen. There's a Zen patriarch who said, "You don't have to go looking for truth. It's right in front of you. Just let go of your opinions, your beliefs." And there's something in Zen that's very experiential. There's no doctrine, but Jill and I both have a Zen practice. Um, if you ask a Zen master, "Is there a God?" They say, "Who knows?" You know, they're kind of agnostic about it. Would it affect the way you live your life? You say, "Well, what's the meaning of life?" And he might say, "Well, do you realize that everybody's related and everybody's connected? And is there any other truth that affects your life more than that?"
Mm.
And if you say, "Well, what happens when I die?" He might say, um, "Well, are you really here now? Are you here now? And isn't that what matters?" And so what you realize when you've been on the journey that we've been on, when you do the radical reconstruction, when you go places people don't go, is all those questions that I thought were really important are not really that important.
Yeah.
And this realization of oneness, and it's going to echo through our conversations. It's what the Eastern religions talk about. It's what the quantum physicists talk about. This idea of oneness is pervasive. It's not something I can put on the shelf and say, "Well, yeah, there's the mystics. You know, this is what they think." Well, it's confirmed. You know, that was the realization to us. It's confirmed. It's it's not just an interesting idea. It's like truth with a capital T. It's the only thing you need to know.
It's reported in the scriptures that Yahweh and Jesus made the statement, I am, I exist.
It's
Yeah.
also reported in the Upanishads. And, you know, this is not what, that's the other thing. You know, raised in a Christian Western world, you say, "Well, we have all the ideas. We're the answer man."
Mhm.
Read the Upanishads, read the Tao Te Ching, read the Dhammapada. It's not so unique. There are images that you think are Christian images that are universal images. You know, there's all kinds of people that think that there was a flood. It was an image, it was a symbol. People talk, you know, I was in a meeting with a bunch of Hindus yesterday, and they were talking about the prime mover, which they call Brahman, ultimate reality, and Shakti, the creative energy, and he used the term logos. Now, if you transpose, well, in Hinduism, there's Brahman, there's everything, and then there's a creative principle that's active in space and time. Then you go over to Christianity, say, oh, we have this God who's beyond space and time, and this incarnation in Jesus who's within space and time. It's but in the Hindu tradition, the next words out of his mouth, somebody says, "Can we bring the gods here?" He says, "The gods are already here." Well, tell me about the person of a god. He said, "They're not persons; they're symbols." Which sounds like Paul Tillich saying there's a Godhead and we create gods as ways of understanding the Godhead. So all of these ideas that we have about what God is really like are just theories. It's not a it's
Yeah.
not a scientific verifiable fact that God is a person or that God is three persons. And when you have a mystical experience, or if you understand the world with a mystical understanding, it's really contrary to experience.
The thing is with mystical experiences have been happening forever, as long as there have been people, and there are some differences in the reporting, but when you think about it, it's the lens, how you were brought up, how you're processing what you've experienced. To me, I said I felt light, and I felt like maybe those spaces in between whatever I was seeing, that was God. So it all comes from your lens, your own lens, even though it may be the exact same experience, you call it something different.
Yeah. All I was going to say was, like, when you were talking, I just kept thinking, like, that's what the Bible reminds me of the left brain. Like, this is how we are trying to make sense of everything. Right. And so, yeah, I don't know. That thought just came to me because the Bible just seems like we were maybe at some point people were having these mystical experiences. And so because that could be considered scary, I'm using air quotes, we had to, neatly put it in this package that seemed more logical. And that could be true of any holy book, really, not to just pick on the Bible, but that's all I know. So that's why I think, but the way we have grabbed onto that as capital T truth,
Yeah.
assumptions
are true.
Right. I think that's where I still struggle a lot.
Jill talked about, I never heard that in church. I mean, I never heard in church, and I went to church for 50 years. Look, all you have to know is everyone's related and everyone's connected.
Right.
It's shocked through the Bible, it's shocked through every other scripture. But instead, as you say, there's no mystery in church. In church, people want to tell you this is how it is. Of course, there's 45,000 ideas about the Christian understanding about how it is. Yeah, this is when you study other traditions, it's really enriching, and it really gives you more perspective on your own. There are things that I realize in Christianity, they do have really universal significance. They really are truth with a capital T. And I see that in other traditions as well. Nobody has a lock on it. Now, I'll also say this. The more, and sometimes people say to me, well, I don't know, you're in all these other religions, you have these experiences. It sounds very speculative to me. Speculative? Do you think that the idea of God as a person is speculative? Do you think that the idea that the universe was created and it didn't evolve, it hasn't always been here? Do you think that's speculative? Do you think virgin birth and resurrections are speculative? The more that your belief system tries to explain things, the more wrong it's going to be. I have 100% certainty in the fact that everybody's related and everybody's connected. I've never had a credible source to tell me, no, that's not true. We're all separate. We're just billiard balls. I've never had a credible source say that. But on the other hand, I've had lots of credible sources say, no, I'm not sure the universe was created by a supreme being. I'm not sure that life had to be the supreme being lighting a spark. I'm not sure that consciousness came from the way that the supreme being implanted it in us. There are other explanations for all those things. So sometimes I get to the point of, I don't know, is there a God? I don't know. Is God personal? I don't know. Is the universe created? I don't know. I don't have to know.
Right.
I have to know everybody's created, everybody's connected. That's what I have to know.
Jill, you're trying to get in here. I want you to close us out because we're running out of time for the first segment. But
okay, I was just going to say, when you do a profound deconstruction like what Larry and I have done, what it does, I think, is just take God out of the box. You know, when you're brought up in a certain tradition, I don't care how wonderful the tradition is, God is in a box. And when you start to deconstruct it, you start learning about what else is out there, and maybe you have some experiences, all of a sudden the box blows open. And that doesn't mean there's no God or that there's no divinity or there's no nothing. It's just not contained.
Yeah, I bet in recent years I've called those assumptions, and that helps me think about it better, that it was just an assumption that somebody gave me, and then I might have changed it a little bit, but it's still an assumption.
We were talking last night, and as an educator, I teach fact versus opinion, right? And so I always tell my students, like, a fact is something you can look up, and you can find studies done on it, and you can see that over many different studies, and replicating that study, it's been proven true, right? But an opinion is, you're going to hear things like, I think, I believe. And we got to talking because, in our particular denomination, you heard that a lot on Sunday morning. We believe, but it's like, but is that really true? Does that define that as truth, or is it just is it an assumption that we have just, through our traditions, we now believe to be true, but does it really make it true?
Larry mentioned the logos, and if I open up that topic, we'll probably be talking for 45 minutes again. But just that old Greek word, that's the reasoning, the logic, the conversation of the universe. I think if we could, if we grasp onto that and talk about the world as a conversation, as a being, that's connected, like Larry's talking about, I think we'd be better off to realize it's not just proving our point, but we can discover, and then we can wrestle with those discoveries and so on. For the listeners out there, I want to thank you, and you can see now why we have Larry and Jill here. But we have a few more topics we want to talk about, so stay tuned for the next episode, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.